and John Nichols on the line with us, the Washington correspondent for The Nation magazine, reporting on the ground from Wisconsin. And just a quick heads up, John and I, and is Norman Solomon joining us?
I think he will.
I think so. Okay. And Tim Carpenter, of course, the head of Progressive Democrats of America, pdamerica.org. We will be doing a gig at Busboys and Poets here in Washington, D.C. Monday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. I may be a little bit late because we finish taping our TV show at 8:30. Yeah. But we're all going to be there, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And you can get all the information and register for it over at PD America, as in Progressive Democrats of America, or pdamerica.org. And so, anyhow, that out of the way, not so much out of the way, but that said, John, I'm continuing to hear bizarre stories coming out of your state.
I mean, we got a few of them, brother.
I know.
And, let me just, as we go into talking a little about Wisconsin, I want to also add that you and I will be celebrating PDA's terrific effort to launch a petition drive to get tens of thousands of signatures into the Democratic senators before they vote on the defense authorization bill and other matters, or as they consider them, to say we need better priorities in America.
Yes.
We need to be dialing down these wars of whim and shifting our money toward single-payer health care, Medicare for all.
Yep. And people can sign that over at pdamerica.org.
Really important piece of work, and I'm so glad to be engaged in that with you and with, I think, the people who get it. Yeah. And you're right to ask about Wisconsin, because I don't see any of these things as disconnected. The fact of the matter is we're in the midst of a great big national struggle that's playing out at the federal and the state levels, and the core question in that struggle, it's the one that you always talk about, and that is whether we're going to be a democracy or a plutocracy, and whether we're going to make that democracy functional at our state and local levels. And that, in Wisconsin right now, that's very much in play.
And whether we're going to be a we society or a me society at the end of the day. And not just in Wisconsin, but all around the Midwest, we're seeing these governors basically trying to take apart organized labor, trying to take apart the social safety net, trying to dismember all these things. We had a caller in the last hour ask Senator Sanders in our Brunch with Bernie hour, asked the senator, what are you all doing about what's going on out here in the states, and particularly these Midwestern states? Although it's happening, it's happening in New Jersey as well. Maine, it's happening, all
Florida.
over. Yeah, Maine, Florida. And Senator Sanders' response was that he hoped that Eric Holder and the Justice Department were paying very close attention, particularly with these new efforts to disenfranchise voters, because these might be violations, presumably, of the Civil Rights Act or the Voter Rights Act, from the 60s. What is the status of what is going on right now in these various states that we need to know about?
Well, Tom, I think the most important thing to be conscious of is the federal government can do a lot on all sorts of levels. The fact of the matter is the federal government takes immense amounts of money from most of the states that you just mentioned. Most of those states are net givers to Washington, and that money goes to pay for wars that are unnecessary, for bailouts of big banks, and also for distributing money to often very Republican, very conservative states that don't give their fair share. So there's a lot that the federal government can do economically on Medicaid reimbursement and other things to really help to balance the budget of states and to end this false construct that says that the states are so broke they have to break unions. That's one side. The flip side of it is to maintain small d democracy in the states, and that's something the federal government and a lot of other people should be looking at very seriously. The American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, which you've talked about a lot on your show, has a plan. That plan is to make radical changes in state voting laws. And remember, states are the folks who operate our elections, both federal and state and local, and to make radical changes in those laws so it's harder to get to the polls, harder for people to participate, harder for people to register, harder for people to vote, and harder for people to have accountability once the votes are cast. We really need a great big pushback against that. And it is not at all unreasonable to suggest that the Senate Judiciary Committee and other committees should be investigating efforts to assault democracy, coordinated efforts to prevent people from fully participating in the small
now,
d democratic
the Republican talking point on this, John, and I've had this debate, is Well, I need a driver's license to get on an airplane. Why, I have to have photo ID to get on an airplane. Why shouldn't I have to have photo ID to vote? And my response to that has been, I doubt more than 5, 10, 50, I don't know the numbers, but I'll bet it's less than 50% of the American population have ever flown on an airplane, and that urban dwellers and elderly people are not showing up at airports with their ID, and they shouldn't have to get an ID just to vote.
Let me ask you a question, Tom. Do you have to show an ID to pay your taxes?
Ha! There you go. Thank you.
If you don't, paying taxes is certainly considered to be a part of citizenship. It's a part of what we do in this society.
Yeah.
But the highest act of citizenship, the one that we ought to presume that everyone should be engaged with, is voting. And so if you don't have to show an ID to pay your taxes, and frankly, if you don't have to show an ID, if you get drafted, they will take you if you're on the list.
Yeah.
You certainly should not have to jump through hoops to cast a vote.
The one ID basically that you have to show in order to pay your taxes, and you don't actually have to show it, you just have to know it, is your Social Security number.
That's right. And if people are going to repeat their Social Security number or ask to repeat it when they go vote, look, the bottom line is these voter ID laws have been developed not merely to make people jump through hoops at the polls. They're developed to make people confused and frightened and uncertain about voting, to think that it's a complicated and difficult process.
So they won't do it.
This is game playing to deny democracy.
There you go. We're seeing the Catherine Harris strategy here on steroids. John Nichols,
exactly right.
thenation.com is the website, and you can see him here in D.C. next Monday. I'll be there, too. John Nichols, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for all you do, Tom.